Well, I am very excited to have all of you here today joining us for this interview skills workshop. And I will turn things directly over to George Volz, who is going to be talking a little bit about preparing to find a job. Go ahead, George.
Well, good morning. My first question is, why do you want a job? Or maybe you already have a job. So how many are already employed? Please raise your hand. And why did you want the job? Did you want the job to have just a paycheck and money management skills? You can raise your hand if that's a yes. Or did you want a job to connect with your community? Another, yeah, maybe. Jobs give social and emotional growth. Was that a reason for you? Okay. How about increased independence? Yes, that's me. Or improved well-being? Yes. And maybe just a greater sense of accomplishment and self-worth. If that's the case, you have come to the right place because we're going to look through the process of doing a job interview. Now, I'm going to set the grounds, a little base, a little foundation work. You got to have a firm foundation. And I think the most firm foundation in preparing for an interview is a self-assessment. We all have hobbies. And those hobbies give us job skills? Yeah. Anybody here garden? Are you gardeners? No? Yes. Painters? Artwork? Both gardening and artwork show your planning ability. You have to plan and work through the process. Those are hobbies that really help us build job skills. Speaking of that, volunteers. Volunteer for the Red Cross, Lions Club, Optimist Club, your schools. Think about those things. Those are great volunteer foundations that help make you more employable. Think about your education. Now, we always think about formal education. I went to here and I did this and I graduated with that. But also think about things like self-study. Toastmasters, by the way, is a self-study class. It's, you go at your own pace and do that. Look for your resources too. If you're looking for a job that's in Des Moines and you live in Omaha, how are you going to get back and forth? What kind of transportation do you have? Or even if it's down the block. So think about how you would get to places you might look at. In this day and age, computer skills are a thing. Zoom, Teams, using spreadsheets like Excel or word processors, all of those things are important resources. So as you're doing your self-assessment, look for things like this. Also look for leadership activities. Do you lead a scout group, a youth group? Do you help with a food pantry? Those are all things that do that. I'm going to ask you to look at one other thing as you're doing your self-assessment. Think about people you know who may work in businesses or employment opportunities that you might be interested in. Think about those. More and more, people are finding that those personal connections connect them faster to the company they want to go. As you're figuring your self-assessment, let's think about what your goals are. What are your goals for seeking employment? First personal, we mentioned at the beginning how working helps with emotional, increases independence, does all those things. So what is your goal? Remember, goals should be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. So as you're setting down your goals, also think about what your work goals are. Are you looking for specific benefits? You know, or are you looking for a job to help you grow into another job? Sometimes some jobs, are what is called entry level, but it gives you tools to help you to move on. Okay, so now you've got your self-assessment down. You've got a concise picture of who you are. So where are you going to work? I highly recommend that you research any place before you apply. Websites, that seems to be a common thing anymore. Have you gone to their website? Have you read through? Do you understand their values and mission? Does it look like it will fit with you? Will you be a good fit for it? Did I mention friends earlier? Friends, people you know that work for that company, don't hesitate to call on a friend and say, I'm thinking about working at XYZ. What do you think? Or if they say, I know somebody that works at XYZ, call them, talk to them. You're establishing, I'm going to use the term loosely here, a family relationship. So why not meet the members of the family? All you've done, and you've done it, and it looks like this is a place for alignment. How do you move on? Well, I'd like to introduce to you Linda Wilson, who's had more than 40 years of experience in journalism and communications. And today, she will share with you a few of her insights on how to write resumes and cover letters, that tool that helps you introduce yourself to a new firm. Please welcome Linda.
I'm going to talk to you a little bit about your resume and the cover letter. Maybe most of you are familiar with, I'm sure, the resume. Some may not be as familiar with the cover letter. So the resume, that is often the first step in getting the interview with the employer. And you should make it real easy to read. It should usually be about a page in length. And just when you look at it, not real texty, just summarizing your accomplishments and skills, and real organized to highlight your relevant experience. Now there's 4 key steps that I'm going to talk about in your resume strategy. And you're probably more familiar with the chronological resume. That's the most commonly used, where it really highlights your experience from most recent on back, trying not to go too far back if you have a real lengthy experience. And it just shows that experience. But if you maybe have some spotty work experience, some gaps and type of things like that, maybe you want to highlight more your skills rather than those specific jobs. That is called a functional resume. We're going to mostly talk about the standard chronological for a few minutes. And I'm going to talk about the format. And we have a sample, I think, that Jessica is going to show. And I'll just mention some of those points that it shows on the resume real quickly on what the good points are to emphasize on your resume. And first of all, you would have your name and your contact information there clearly. Do you have that, Jessica? So you see that you have your name very clearly there with your contact information. And then there's a summary, a resume summary. And basically that's 2 or 3 sentences that really describe you and your professional offering. Just very brief, very succinct. Then you'll move on to the other section, which is your work experience or your professional history and your educational experience. Your company name, your job title, the dates of employment, and then 3 bullet points. They say really not more than 3 bullet points, but those key duties, responsibilities, and achievements. And after your work experience, you have your educational history. Again, any education, undergrad, grad, certifications, and that type of thing. Now you can also mention your skills section. Now with skills, we have typically the hard skills we think about. What are some job strengths, languages, computer programming, copywriting, software training, those type of things. But don't forget the soft skills, which are very important as well, on communication, organization, time management, and leadership. There's another section that is optional, but for some jobs, this may be something you really want to highlight on the awards and achievements. Maybe you have publications or some other hobbies and interests that might be very pertinent to the job. The next thing you would want to do is really perfect those bullet points that you have mentioned there. A strong action verb at the beginning of your bullet point would be very, very good to attract attention to that potential employer. You delivered, whatever you delivered, you acquired, you implemented a plan, you optimized, use those action verbs to really capture the attention. And then numbers and their impact. If you accomplish something, say what you did. You increase sales by whatever percent. Really important, but at the same time, stay very concise. Then tailor that resume to match your job description. Try to include only one work experience, achievement, education. Try to include only the work experience, achievements, education, and skills that are most relevant to the employer. And then put it higher on the resume to get attention. Carefully read the postings. In your research, you would look at job postings to see what the key items are they're looking for in an employee. And then keep it brief. And here's a point that I ran across, and I've heard this before, but research shows that hiring managers, they tend to only look at a resume for about 6 seconds. That is not very long. So make sure you have, they call it the more valuable real estate at the top of your resume to really capture that attention. And then research the company, like I said, and really know where and to whom the resume should be sent. Who is that hiring manager? Who is that you want to reach out to? And then it's really good to know that preferred method for submitting the resume, whether it's email, even snail mail, or uploaded, or on the internet, however it is that they want you to submit that. Really know about that. Those are just a few key points on your resume. There's much, much more. Over the years, like I said, I've interviewed and been the interviewee. Things have changed over the years, but as I reviewed my information, a lot of it's simply technology and the means for submitting that information and really reaching out to the people. Sometimes it's even easier, I don't want to say easier, but better maybe on the means to find out about companies that you can check for online. As far as a cover letter, is most everyone familiar with a cover letter? Many of you use that means of communicating. It kind of supplements that resume. And really, it's a 3 to 4 paragraph memo to employees, and it explains your interest in the job and the company, as well as how you're fit for the role. And it's typically submitted, like I said, along with your resume in the job application. And what cover letters do is they really allow you to sell yourself and let yourself shine. You can talk in more detail about your career and explain why you are the best fit for that role in the company. And there's a sample here. And while cover letters are not always required, Many hiring managers still rely on them to gauge your skill and experience and background. And it's like I said, it's a great way to go in above and beyond to show why you're genuinely interested in the job. So there's 6 steps here, but you start with your header, with your date and your contact information, and then the recipient's contact information, and include a greeting. So when you're researching, try if you can to find the name of the person who will be reviewing the applications for the job. And if you're unable to provide or find the preferred gender pronoun, just use a gender neutral greeting. And then in that opening paragraph, you could mention the job, mention the job for which you're applying and where you saw the position posted. And maybe explain that specific interest in the role and the company so the reader really knows that you've done your research and you have really genuine interest. And then briefly explain the main experience or the qualification that makes you a really good fit for the job. In other words, in that first paragraph, you need a good impression and you need to make it quickly and succinctly. Now in your second paragraph, you're going to provide a brief overview of your background, as it's relevant to the position. You'll have key achievements, skills, and specialties that make you really suited to perform well. But be sure and focus only on 1 or 2, and then provide some specific details. And again, measurable impacts that you made are important. Again, pay close attention to keywords that were listed in that job description and those that you identify with. You can mention those specifically in this paragraph. And again, only 1 or 2 of your recent professional experiences should be mentioned. Then in your closing paragraph, you can focus on another achievement or skill. And instead of repeating details, this is important. Don't really repeat details from your resume, but expand on a specific story or anecdote that could demonstrate your skills and qualifications. Then end with a professional sign-off, keep the conclusion brief, and explain that you look forward to hearing from the employer and with their next steps. So final tips, really customize your header based on your application and avoid generic references to your abilities. Anyone could say, I accomplished this or that, but give an anecdote that shows how you use problem solving or some tangible results on your career and show examples of those skills in action. Again, keep it short and to the point. Don't reiterate everything on your resume. Focus on 1 or 2 anecdotes, and very, very important, proofread. Keep an eye out for errors, spelling, grammar, punctuation, and triple check the spelling of that hiring manager's name if you include it. So again, as I've pointed these areas out, that letter there in front of you. So here is a little bit about what that says. It's hard to read there. Dear hiring manager, I'm excited to be applying for the web developer position at your company name. I've been programming websites and using CSS to create user-friendly experiences since I was in middle school. So it's always been a passion of mine. I've also been intrigued by your company since it won Most Innovative at the National Web Development Awards 2 years ago. I strive to stay on the cutting edge of web design and development. So when I saw the job posting, I knew I had to apply. During my previous role at the company name, I built a website completely from scratch for a recently rebranded business, both ahead of schedule and within budget. I started by gathering requirements from my clients and holding a focus group to perform user research. My favorite part about web design is building a solution that impresses the client and meets the needs of users and customers. My new website was responsive, extremely fast, and included the latest e-commerce features. After launch, I continued to lead optimization efforts. Through A/B testing, I improved the click-through rate by 10% and reduced the bounce rate on the website's landing page by 35%. As your web developer, I would bring these skills to develop websites that exceed the expectations of clients and customers and drive real business results. One of the factors that really attracted me to this role is that your company values giving back to the community. In my spare time, I run free web development workshops for at-risk youths. In these workshops, I teach them the basics of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and serve as a mentor. As I grow in my career, applying my skills to help others and make an impact on the world becomes more and more important. I believe this role would give me that opportunity. Thank you for your consideration and time. I'm looking forward to learning more details about the position and company. So basically, that is how it is done. I think you would agree that that really captured that person's skill set. It's fairly succinctly, I would say, and they really shared their anecdotes and their passions. And it was another way to not duplicate the resume, but to reinforce what is on the resume. With that, I've covered some of the basics on resume writing and the cover letter. This is a very extensive area. There's lots to know. So don't be overwhelmed. And there's so much out there information. I did a little review, and some of this was from Indeed.com. They have excellent little clips, video clips, YouTube, all sorts of resources and information. So there's lots of information for you to find out there.
Linda seems to have been frozen. I'm Floy Westermeier, and I have worked in human resources personnel for many years, retired now, but the things are still about the same. You want to find a job, you want to get hired, you want to know how to interview, you know what to do. So my portion of the meeting today is going to be talking about the preparation necessary to get that job once you get the interview. Everybody has talked today about preparation, getting things, knowing why you want the job, getting your resume done, getting your application completed and sent in. But there's still some other things that you need to do once you get that resume and that application sent in. The first thing I want to mention is Linda talked about a wonderful cover letter that she attached to her resume. Be prepared, and this is what we're going to talk about, to substantiate with examples of everything you said in that cover letter. You want to be specific. You want to be able to give them concrete examples. You've said you have all these skills, so be prepared because they're going to ask you about that. And so there's a lot of commonalities to any job you apply for. It doesn't matter. Linda happened to use the one on software. I would sometimes, depending upon what it is, hesitate about using the initials for software, but nowadays most people know that. Depends upon who's going to be reading the cover letter first as to how much you spell out on that. But let's talk about some of the approach that you use to identifying your skills and explaining those qualifications during the interview process itself. Now, George said we need to understand why we want the job, why we're going after the job, what is happening there, what do we want, why are we applying for this job. We need to think about what do they need. We know what we want. Now, what does the company need? How can I take what I want and match it up to what the company wants? So you want to be prepared. They've talked about researching the company. One thing I didn't hear mentioned is when you're researching the company, look for their community outreach. If you are a volunteer person or you belong to private organizations, Kiwanis, Lions, Toastmasters, you work with the teammates, whatever, be sure and mention that somehow as you're going through the interview process. Be prepared to use that as a connection to make with the company, because the first thing you want to do is to be able to make a connection. And in the cover letter, Linda did that when she talked about the awards that they won. So after you've made the connection, be prepared to do that. You don't want to do it right off. You want to wait into the interview a little bit further, unless they bring it up in the beginning. And with that first question out, like, tell me about yourself. That's a good way right away if they say, tell me about yourself, to make that connection. And when you tell about yourself, you don't want to talk about all your work experience and things that's on your resume, the things that they know about you. You want to be able to tell them what you're doing now, what you have been doing, and what you plan to do in the future. Just a short, simple summary about this is what I'm about. Not where you were born, not where you live, not any of that stuff. Your career aspirations is what you want to use, and a little bit of volunteer work to extend that out. It also helps to know what questions that they're going to be asking you. And that's hard to know, but again, as they talked about before this, look at the resume. What are the job skills that they're looking for? And if you're not sure how to answer some of this, go out online. You can just type in job interviews and it'll give you hundreds of questions with suggested answers for them. You can type in how to interview. They have videos. It's all out there. You just have to go out there and answer. The thing you've got to want to know though is to look at their examples, then put it in your words, tailor it to your experiences and how your experience fits into their job. You always want to remember that you want them to see how your skills augment and fit into their company and so why they should hire you and why it's important. So practice your questions, practice the answers. Look at it when you know what questions might be, and there's some generic ones that we'll talk about in a minute. Practice that over and over again until you can just answer it without having to stop and think too much. But on the other hand, when they ask you a question, don't immediately jump in to answer it. Pause for a moment so that they think, okay, your question is important. I'm thinking for just a moment about your question. Because I know my tendency is just to jump in right away with an answer. And I have to think about pausing before I give that answer, because it shows poise on your part. It shows confidence on your part, tells them you're thinking about what it is that they ask and you're going to give a thoughtful answer to that. So, but you want those questions, the answers to be totally natural coming from you. If you're interviewing on electronic media, and that's what most of it is today, ask them what medium will they be using, because not everybody uses Zoom. And then the government uses WebEx and the doctors use a different one, and it's all over the place. Everybody has different mediums you're going to use. So you want to know what that is. So if possible, ahead of time, you can at least look at it. A lot of times you can download enough of it to see what it's like before you get there. But either way, if you can't do that, most of you have been doing it here anyway, look at your own Zoom camera, look at whatever medium you're using, make sure that your head's going to be showing. They can see you. You don't have distractions in the back. And my computer tells me every time I get an email when I'm on it, turn that off, turn off all distractions, because I will tend to look over to see what that was. And sometimes I'll even click on it to get rid of it. But you want to get rid of all of that kind of thing. Some of the other things you want to do is plan to join a few minutes ahead. 3 to 5 minutes. A lot of times they don't let you in until right at the last minute, but at least if you come in at 5 minutes and then you see it says waiting, I get back off and then come back on again in about 2 minutes till, and I wait at that time until they let me in, because it shows that I'm on time and that I value their time. I'm ready when they're ready. So I always try to sign in a few minutes ahead of time. Dress the same way that you would if you were taken for the job. I know I've seen a lot of postings on Facebook where from the waist up, we're professional, from the waist down, we're casual at home. And that's okay. But from your waist up, be professional, dress the way that they do. And if you're not sure how they dress, drive by the company, see if there's anybody there. Look online. They'll have some pictures of people from the company. If they're community connected and they do a lot of work with the community, or they're doing other things, they will have posted pictures on their website that shows how they dress. So that'll give you a clue as to what to do. May not seem like much, but sometimes it can make a difference. Body language. I see a lot of you are nodding your heads and you're looking and paying attention, and you want to do this at the interview. You don't want to just sit there and stare ahead straight into the camera and not move. You want to be natural. You want to relax. You want to smile. You want to show that you're interested. Sometimes you might even lean forward a little bit when they're asking a question, and then lean back when you get ready to pause for that answer, and then lean forward again just a little bit to give them the answer. Making a connection with your audience is what you're trying to do with that. And it's difficult on the Zoom. And I have a hard time looking straight ahead at that camera. And they tell you on the website, look straight at the camera. But when I look straight at the camera, maybe it looks like I'm staring at you, but I can't see the person I'm talking to. So I will move around a little bit. I won't try not to look down though, because then that moves my eye. I lose the eye contact. But I do try to maintain eye contact, but I look different places with it. So do what's natural for you. And then you're doing this too, address the person that asks the question. They usually would introduce themselves in the beginning of it, jot down their names quickly. You can do that without looking at your paper so that you know who's asking the question, and then call that person by name and as you respond to them. And if you need a little bit more time to think about a question, say, well, you know, Rhonda, it really is a good question. And then go ahead and answer it. You give importance to them, and it buys you a few seconds to think about how you want to answer that question. The other thing is, if you don't know the answer, say so. So I haven't worked in that medium. I haven't done that before. However, I have worked in blah, 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 and I would be delighted to learn a new skill. In fact, that's one of the strengths that I have is I love learning new things, and I'm willing to dedicate the time to learning that program or learning that process. So don't try, because they'll know if you try to convince them that you know more than you do know. So it doesn't hurt any to say, I don't know, but I'm willing to learn. So the other thing is, whenever you're setting up your computer, check your background, check the lighting. You don't want distractions. I mentioned that before, but the lighting can make a difference. If they can't see you well, they can't tell what your expressions are. They won't be as able to listen to you because they'll be trying to see who you are and see what you're doing, and it'll throw them all off. You'll see them sit back and ask a question, and then you're going through, well, we got to get through this interview type thing. So you want to kind of watch their body language too, because they'll lean forward and they'll show interest. A couple of the other things that I'd just like to talk about, because we want to get through a mock interview and have time for that, and have you have time is like also is they will always ask you at the end, do you have any questions for us? The answer is yes, period, yes. You find something to ask them about. If it's no more than, when do you plan to hire, or when would I hear from you? But I usually try to find something other than that. I usually try to find something about the job that was in the job description. If there's anything they didn't cover that you can notice, you might bring that up. Or something else you might bring up if you've done your home research is something, of course, I volunteer with teammates. So one of the questions I would ask would be, I have been volunteering with teammates now for several years, and oftentimes I go to the schools at lunchtime as part of my volunteer efforts. Would you allow me administrative time or allow me to take my lunch hour such that I could go work with teammates? That's a question you could ask, because most times they won't bring up anything like that. It shows, number one, you're a volunteer, you're involved in the community, and number three, you respect their time. And it gives you good points with them, brownie points, if you will, with the people that you're interviewing with. So find something to ask them a question. And another way of approaching that too is at the end, if they say, do you have any questions? You can say, well, I noticed on your website that you are involved in a lot of community. And if they've named anything that you've been involved in, you might mention that I'm involved in that also as a connection. And just say, do you offer that for your employees through the company? So just find a way. Oh, never, ever say, no, I have no questions. Just because that tells them that you really haven't been listening as much. I did want to talk briefly about the STAR model, which is, again, out on the internet, but it's a STAR interview process, and then I'll go briefly through that. When you're looking at answering questions, consider using what's called a STAR model. You want to know what the situation is, and this is what I did. What's the context of answering that question? This is the task that I did when I was in that situation. This is the action that I took to resolve the problem or to improve the sales or to do whatever it was. These are the results. So you always want to say, this is what I'm doing. This is the task that was assigned me. This is how I accomplished this task. And this is the results of that task. And you put all answers to all your questions in that format and keep it brief. Then they will understand that you know what you're talking about, and they will be able to understand what it is that they're looking for as well. Now, I have some potential questions, but I'm not going to go into those now. Let's do our interview first, and then we can come back to potential questions if we have time, or during the interviews breakout sessions. So now to conduct our interview and to give you an example of what it might be like to hear somebody asking questions and somebody responding, We have our Toastmaster, Linda Wilson, who just did her portion. And then we have our interviewee, Lisa Lopez, on here. So Linda, take it away.
Thank you, Floy. Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning, Linda.
It's a beautiful morning today, and we're gathered here for the interview process. And thank you for your interest in the marketing assistant position here at Ventures Inc.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
And for taking the time to interview with us today.
Absolutely.
I have some questions for you to answer today. Are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Let's get to it. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I currently am a marketing associate at a food pantry, and I'm looking to grow into more of a corporate section. My role in marketing department is to find ways to present products and messaging to specific target audiences. And I'm looking to grow further into more of a corporate world and being able to have a larger audience to learn from.
Very good. Why do you want this job here at Ventures Inc.?
The reason why I've applied for this job is because I've seen your work with larger corporations. So one example that I saw on your website was from a case study with Cisco. And what I appreciated about your work in this worldwide company was that you took Cisco from being a very technical, savvy company into a way that people understood what Cisco was. And so at the very beginning, before you brought on your marketing team, I noticed that it was extremely technical jargon and it didn't really reach a wide audience. And then you brought in your marketing team and you were able to identify specific targets and make Cisco a brand that was able to identify with everybody and not just so much a technical aspect of it. And so being able to contribute my creative aspects to that and to a wider worldwide audience is something that I'm really looking forward to.
Very good. Why would you want to leave your current position?
I feel that I've currently reached the potential and I feel like I'm at a good place to leave right now. Again, the food pantry that I work at is simply community-based, and I've been there for quite some time now. So I'm looking to grow further.
Okay, here's a question for you that may take a little thought. Describe a problem that you've encountered, whether at work or in your life, and how you solved it.
A problem that I encountered while I was at work. One of the problems that I've identified is communication. So within the marketing department at the current position I'm at, it's only me in the marketing department, but I work with all the other departments as well. And sometimes my job can just simply be seen as, hey, I need you to make this sign. I need you to make this sign. I need you to make this sign. So what I had to do was help my coworkers understand that I'm not simply just a sign maker. What my goal is to help the client and help our donors understand why this is important. So by doing that, I was able to work throughout the entire department. So I was this common denominator, the marketing department, because I knew what every department was doing. So one, it helped eliminate all of these extra tasks that all the departments were putting in, because I was able to work with each department and say, hey, you might want to be talking to that department because they're doing something similar. So one, it eliminated multiple duplicate tasks, and being able to help communicate and streamline that communications amongst the department was really efficient.
Very good. What would you say then is your greatest weakness?
Someone once told me that I try to boil the ocean and I shouldn't do that. So I try to take on way too many tasks at one point. And I should just focus really, what I'm really good at, but at the same time, continue to learn. So if I don't know the answer to something, I will always say yes. Google is my best friend. So I say yes, but I'll Google it later. And I'm always learning. But to try to figure out how to win the Nobel Peace Prize of this one particular project, I realize it's not possible, but I can just put my best foot forward in learning at least the basics of it.
Where do you see yourself about 5 years from now?
In about 5 years, I see myself helping companies find their own voice and being consistent with their marketing and their voice. Again, going back to the biggest problem that I see sometimes amongst companies is that each department lives in its own cell and there's no communication between it. And so that's why within marketing, it's so important to be that common denominator. So I see myself in 5 years being able to streamline all that communication, provide products that are good for the company as well. Not just through, hey, look at this amazing product, but advertising it as the client makes this product amazing. And so being able to do that again through that corporate world is where I see myself.
Why should we at Ventures Inc. hire you for this marketing assistant position?
My greatest value, not so much is the creative output that I'm producing, but it's the creative vision that I have for it and the creative problem solving approaches that I bring. One of the examples that I can give is back in 2018, I went to this conference out in New York City, and I had an opportunity to provide or to brainstorm ideas for Paper Magazine, which is a independent fashion magazine, and it focuses on the arts and cultures, and large celebrities are there. And the main editor is Mickey Boardman. And I had 5 minutes to come up with a creative idea for their next issue. And there were also different groups there. But the client that they were working with was Kim Kardashian. And I knew that the project was create a spread that's Kim Kardashian in a way that we'd never see her before. And I knew, I had a feeling that most of the groups were going to portray Kim Kardashian as somebody who wasn't wearing any makeup, because we see her all the time with such heavy makeup and large fashion. And I was trying to go a different way to stand out. And I came up with this concept of Kim Kardashian just as an everyday American, sitting on her couch, scrolling through Instagram, maybe watching The Simpsons in the background, have some Cheetos crumbs on her shirt. And sure enough, that concept stuck with Mickey versus all the other groups who were just showcasing Kim Kardashian as natural look, minimalist style. And all he asked me was, does your improv background help with this? And yes, and I am in improv, and one of the best things about improv is that you're always building people up, and you're saying yes and, because the moment that you say no to somebody, you're just blocking them off. So it was a really fun example. So
thank you for sharing that. Great example. Do you have any questions for me?
I do. Within your company, my role as marketing, how does that contribute to the 5-year plan?
We are expanding right now, is why we have this position. We're looking as a consultant more for the different companies, the government and so forth, providing the most excellent marketing services possible to enhance their company. We're really looking and moving forward to expand that client base And your position would fit in that very nicely with that experience and ability to jump right in with those clients to give them the best service that they deserve to move forward as a company and reach out to more customers. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Any additional questions?
Not at this time. I appreciate it though. Thank you so much for allowing me to interview today. It means a lot.
Thank you, Lisa, for interviewing with us for the position, the marketing assistant position. We will be making selections for a second interview, and we'll let you know when a decision is made, and we appreciate your interest in Ventures Inc. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Linda. You too.
Thank you.